everybody. How are you today? Today we're talking about a subject that a lot of people don't enjoy speaking to. In fact, when I first became a coach, this was the type of coaching I did. And it kind of alludes to these taboo subjects, things that we shouldn't talk about. What I have realized, and I will say this again later on in the podcast episode, is that witnessing ruptures is not victimy. It is not victimy to look at where you've been lied to or to look at these ruptures and give them appropriate dressing so that wounds can heal. What I think sometimes people, especially people in positions of power and privilege, wish could happen is that we could put a band-aid on something that needs a lot more than that and call it good. And then when we say we need more support here, to be gaslit or villainized for that is not appropriate. So we're going to talk about betrayal today. I'm going to talk about different types of betrayal, why I started out coaching a betrayal, and I want to end this podcast with a message of hope because I speak to this stuff with an energy of healing and hope and movement and awakening and shifting towards a world that is safer than ever. So let's get rolling. I have been thinking about betrayal a lot lately. If you look at the state of our country, a lot of different things that are happening in different spheres. I think a lot of people are starting to feel this, right? Even some of these right wing MAGA people are starting to feel duped by our current president. So, when I first started as a coach, I was doing betrayal trauma coaching specifically for religious women navigating the aftermath of finding out about their husband's porn use or their husband telling them about their porn use or their partner, someone they were dating, and navigating whether they should get married because of that. It was very sacred work that we did together. And I felt compelled to do this work because I was my own avatar. I had been navigating betrayal in my own marriage for 4 years prior to this, and I felt like I'd pretty much been doing it alone because there were not a lot of resources out there where people were openly talking about this. At the time, there were still therapists, and I would say this is probably true today, working on a codependency model where women who were seeking out help because of ruptures in their marriage were being told it was partially their fault. So, approaching this the way that I did, and thank God I had an amazing therapist who understood this stuff really deeply. When I finally decided to go to therapy, it made a big difference for me. When I decided to move into coaching to help more people, I always just thought, oh, I coach differently because we're doing betrayal work, because we're doing this deeper work. I kind of felt like I was in this in between place where we were doing mindset work to help people move beyond this stuff, but we were also doing nervous system work, somatic work, and deeper emotional processing. And so as I look back, I see this woman in her early 30s navigating betrayal by being lied to in her marriage, navigating betrayal by a trusted family member who had abused my partner, and then my partner's own, him working through his betrayal trauma around that, wounds around the story we were told about how life was supposed to be. You check off these boxes, all will be well. We were the quintessential check the box couple. And yet we still were getting our hearts broken through these times as we became more open and conscious of things happening in the world around us and things that were happening to us. In my earlier coaching, I saw pretty quickly that people experiencing betrayal trauma needed more than mindset work. They needed safety, somatic support. They needed a lot of witnessing and validation and a nervous system informed approach. They needed somebody who got it. And I did because I had lived it. I always thought that I just coached differently because of my niche. But as I continued to heal and mature and ask bigger questions about life and the meaning and why we're here, I began to see more. And what I saw was that while coaches started coming to me and hiring me not for their partner's porn use, but for other things, what I started to see is that betrayal isn't just something that happens in your marriage with respect to porn use or infidelity or emotional affairs. It happens in relationships, it happens all around us. There are relational betrayals, family system betrayals, societal betrayals, religious betrayals, even betrayals by your own body. So let's pause and name a few examples, and I'll explain a little bit more to you. For a lot of people, it's probably easy to see what relational betrayals might look like. A friend who pulls back when you need them most, a partner who dismisses your boundaries or minimizes your pain, a parent who withheld love and demanded perfection, coaches or therapists who use your vulnerability for control. Hopefully that doesn't happen a lot, but I think it's something to be aware of because we grew up in a hierarchical society. Some people, clients, will oftentimes decide that their coach or their doctor or their priest or their pastor or their bishop, that they will unconsciously or consciously pedestalize people that they're paying for help or people that they have been told to trust. And that vulnerability can be used or exploited for control. If we get into professional betrayals, being promised a promotion that never came, some might say, yeah, get on with it, right? But it could also be a betrayal of trust and expectation. You may have been led to believe that your effort and your loyalty would be rewarded. And then when that promise was broken, it can undermine your sense of safety, fairness, and even your self worth. And in some cases, it can activate shame, self doubt, freeze responses, especially if you overperform to earn it. And it can be tough to be lied to and then somehow find a reason to blame yourself for it. So this can happen. And sometimes there's a good reason for it and sometimes there's not. But what I just want to acknowledge here is that if you've experienced this, it's yours to process and move through as needed for you. A professional betrayal could look like getting let go after years of loyalty. While we can say, oh, well, this is capitalism at its finest, or this is what the market needs, supply, demand, it doesn't mean that feelings may not need to be felt. For some people, it could mean a rupture of relational and systemic trust. You gave your time, your energy, even your identity to a workplace that didn't hold you with the same commitment. For many, work can become like a primary attachment system, and being get let go can feel like abandonment, especially when it happens without proper acknowledgement or appropriate communication. Okay. So I'm not saying that nobody should ever be let go, but there's just different things going on. And the more that we can be anchored into ourself, our trust, our knowing, we can be more clear about maybe making sure that we don't identify with our job. So there's like this side of it that's ours. And then there's also this side of not taking on stuff that isn't yours as well. Another one might be experiencing discrimination because of who you are, whether it's age based, gender based, race based, sexism, recognizing that that can happen too. If we get into religious betrayals, some people might think that this stuff isn't real and that people blow it out of proportion. But I will just say from personal experience, this is a big one that I've worked through and had to do a lot of work on after growing up in a high demand, high control religion. So being told that you're equal, but never being given leadership, especially my experiences with the LDS church. Some people might say, but women do have leadership positions. We have leadership positions because of a man. It can be given by a man and taken by a man, right? So there is leadership, but it's not exactly equal. And you can know that by taking a look to see how many prophets there have been. You can know that by taking a look to see who is speaking at General Conference. Sometimes your leadership as a woman is determined by how cool your stake president is, how open your bishop is. So, on a local level, so much good can be happening. And women can be given power to have impact and create a lot of impact. But at the end of the day, when it's systemically not set up that way, a lot of people can be harmed by these systems. It can also create cognitive dissonance because you're told one thing, hey, you guys are equal, but shown another through repeated exclusion, okay, or repeated deference. And it can just end up being very confusing and very mind deafy for people who are in it, okay? And over time, this can erode self trust and breed internalized shame because you're told something, but you're shown another. So, what message are you internalizing? It can mimic relational gaslighting where words and actions don't match and can leave people questioning their intuition and reality. And then, when they're reaching out and trying to get help from people who don't see it as well, gaslighting from others can commence even if it's unconscious, and a lot of nervous system overrides or spiritual bypassing. Another thing in religion could be being shamed for normal human desires. This can be the betrayal of our body and self. So when our natural instincts like curiosity, desire, pleasure are labeled as sinful or dangerous or only good within a certain parameter, it can fracture the relationship between you and your body. It can create this disconnect that never needs to be there. The nervous system then learns to associate safety with suppression and danger with aliveness, which can lead to chronic dysregulation, disembodiment, or fawning in adulthood. Another thing that I can see that's heart wrenching to watch and experience is watching people in your community turn on you when you choose your truth, when you choose to individuate and develop your spirituality appropriately on your own timeline when it makes sense for you. For some people, it is a matter of survival to choose themselves, to choose their truth. To be turned on or turned against when you're doing that can be heart wrenching and a betrayal of attachment and identity. Spiritual communities often function like family systems. When you individuate, when you ask questions or leave, you're sometimes cast out. This activates a primal fear that most of us have, which is that of exile. The experience can feel like being emotionally orphaned. The grief is deep, ongoing, because it can be both a loss of community and the narrative of who you thought you were or what you were taught love was. Okay. This is a big one, and I see it a lot living in Utah right now. It's something that I see a lot of, and it is heart wrenching. If you don't believe me and you don't think this happens a lot, if you can keep your lips zipped and go join a nuanced Mormon Facebook community, you're going to learn some things. But please do not tell people that their experience is not theirs just because you grew up differently. Let's talk about medical betrayals. These are profound, especially when viewed through the lens of relationship trauma, power dynamics, and nervous system impact. I think things have changed a lot. I would say with all of this stuff, we're going in a good direction. I think when I imagine my grandmother's generation, it might have been like, when you go to the doctor, keep your mouth shut, do what he says, right? It seemed like a lot more of that happened a few generations back, but not to say that unfortunate stuff like that doesn't happen today. Not being believed by your doctor it happens a lot with people who are different because so many research studies and academic studies were just done on men. So if you are part of a marginalized group and your doctor doesn't get it and he doesn't recognize it and he doesn't believe your experience, that can be a betrayal of attunement and authority. When someone you were taught to trust with your body and well-being dismisses your experience, it can trigger a rupture in felt safety. The person in the protector role doesn't listen, doesn't see you, and gaslights your reality. This can create long-term self-doubt, freeze responses in future medical encounters, and a deep mistrust of systems. You might not even know why. You might just not trust the doctor or not trust the dentist. You might go to trustworthy dentists, but not trust them because of experiences you've had in the past or what you've internalized from society. Another thing that can happen in the medical sphere is having your symptoms dismissed or pathologized. This is a betrayal of your voice, your lived experience, especially common for women, BIPOC, neurodivergent people. Being told your pain is in your head or misdiagnosed as anxiety or attention seeking or hysteric severs that bond between mind and body if we aren't taught to anchor into our trust, anchor into our knowing. It teaches people to override, suppress, or second guess their symptoms, often leading to worsening conditions and internalized shame on top of it. So we're just like layering in the shame along with symptoms not getting better. Another thing that we could see is being overprescribed or denied the care that you need. And this can be a betrayal of consent and informed care, whether it's being numbed with medication without addressing root causes or being denied access to tests, procedures, or specialists. Some people are left powerless in a system meant to support them. This can create a complex trauma loop where the very people tasked with helping you can become a source of harm. The nervous system learns to associate help with risk. I say all of this while simultaneously honoring those professionals out there who are doing everything they can to get surgeries approved, working with insurance companies and running their team. There's so much happening in the day to day of medical professionals. I'm not saying it's happening with every single doctor. I've had great experiences with doctors in my life, generally really great ones. Just a few little things here and there that didn't love, but generally had really, really great experiences. So I want to honor that while recognizing that not everybody has that lived experience. These betrayals are often minimized or normalized, yet they can impact how a person relates to themselves, their body, their voice, or their worth for years to come. Let's talk about societal betrayals. Realizing that the education you got left out entire chapters of truth. That is one I have felt. When I think about history books, a lot of them are geared towards America is the best country in the world and this and this and this. And it makes sense that there might be a healthy level of nationalism, but not when it turns things into an us versus them, like we're better than them type energy, which happens a lot in America and probably in some other countries too. This can be a betrayal of epistemic trust, your trust in the sources you were taught to rely on. When you discover that your history was whitewashed, that colonization was minimized, or that voices like yours were erased, it can destabilize your worldview. Okay. The nervous system may register this as a rupture in foundational safety. I was misled about that. What else don't I know? Okay. That what else don't I know? I felt that deeply when I was going through my own betrayal around my partner's porn use. It was like, gall, like I remember thinking, wow, I had no idea that this lie was happening. What else don't I know? Okay, so it can be destabilizing. It can create grief. It can create anger, a sense of betrayal toward the institutions you once trusted to teach you the truth. I think about my undergraduate degree in economics from a conservative university and basically how elitist it was. We know better. We know this. And looking back, don't love it. Another societal thing that we might see is watching the justice system fail those who need it the most. I've seen this here in the US. I've seen it living in France with mothers, and it can be a betrayal of fairness, protection, and collective belonging. So, whether through racialized sentencing, lack of accountability for systemic harm, or victim blaming in courts, witnessing this can feel like relational trauma on a societal scale. And for marginalized communities, this is not often just observed, it's lived. And that teaches the body, I'm not safe here. The system wasn't meant for me. The last one I want to mention around societal betrayal is seeing this idea of freedom being used as a weapon instead of a right. This betrayal of moral integrity and shared humanity. When freedom becomes a code for domination, exclusion, indifference to other sufferings, it can fracture the very fabric of community and shared values. The body may register this as moral injury, a profound dissonance between what you were taught was right and what's playing out around you. This can lead to cynicism, collapse, rage, numbness, all signs of nervous system dysregulation in response to repeated social betrayal. These betrayals are layered, cumulative, and systemic, but they are also deeply personal. They leave imprints that can show up in everyday behaviors, hypervigilance, distrust of authority, internalized oppression, chronic freeze, the fear of being too much, the fear of being too visible, or not being able to trust yourself, or not knowing what you want in the first place. And then, yes, and we have internalized betrayals too, the ones we don't always see coming, the ones that we do to ourselves because we were taught to. A lot of times, internalized betrayal, when we betray ourselves, first of all, if you're doing this, please don't do this with an energy of shame or guilt. It's actually how a lot of us were socialized to behave. Because when you override your body's no to please others, you get accolades, right? You're thanked, you're glorified. When you silence your truth to be a part of community, you're nice and you're kind and agreeable. And if you shrink your dreams or needs because you were told they were too much, staying small, staying invisible and busy helps a lot of other people, but it doesn't always help you. It can keep things running when the people who are in positions of power would prefer that you basically be invisible, not a burden, but still exploited. Also, abandoning your younger self because that part of you was never welcomed. I see that a lot, especially with adults where we're doing a lot of inner child work. These betrayals sting deeply because they blur the line between self and other. They come from cultural conditioning, repeated rupture, and nervous system patterning. And healing them takes a lot of courage. And here I am talking about different types of betrayal, and some of you might be thinking, she's using a strong word for pretty normal stuff, but that's not what our ruptures need. Our ruptures don't need to hear, it's pretty normal, so get over it, right? So, what I want to be really clear about is that with different subjects I've taught over the years as a coach, sometimes I lean into war, sometimes I lean towards more taboo subjects, but it's because we need to shed light on them. Ruptures heal once conscious light is shed on those ruptures, once a wound is dressed appropriately. So, this is not victimy to talk about. It's actually a very profound step. The willingness to look at betrayal is a profound, powerful act of revolution, and I would say self-reclamation. From trauma research, we know that what makes something traumatic isn't always about the acute event that happened, but how someone felt in the aftermath, what support they did or didn't have after the event. Dr. Gaber Mate teaches that trauma is not the event itself, but what happens inside of you when you feel like you have to disconnect from yourself to survive. Betrayal is one of the most potent trauma responses because it teaches us to override our instincts in exchange for safety, connection, or approval. This can create a separation from self, and healing comes as we reconnect with self. All right. According to research from Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and others in the field of trauma, naming the experience, bringing implicit memory into explicit awareness is one of the first steps towards integration and relief. This is why practices like narrative exposure therapy, somatic experiencing, and inner child work can be so powerful because they help us not just talk about the betrayal, but feel it, witness it. I would say feel it, witness it differently than it probably was in the past, and release it. In neuroscience terms, we're rewiring neural pathways that used to scream, I'm not safe, when certain memories or patterns emerge. We're building new associations through presence, compassion, and co regulation. So, when I say it's not victimy to name your betrayal, I mean it's actually a radical act of repair. You're saying what happened matters and I matter. You are reclaiming your story. And because when betrayal goes unnamed, it metastasizes. It gets passed on and reflected into your daily life. It shows up in how you parent and how you partner and how you lead and how you love. It shows up in how you treat yourself. But when we name it, when we feel it, when we honor it, when we metabolize it and release it, we shift the paradigm. We break generational trains and we rewire our brains. We anchor in and we come home to ourselves in a way that maybe we haven't felt since birth. Yes, it can be hard. And yes, it is absolutely sacred. It's some of the most sacred work I've ever been involved with for myself and for the clients that I've worked with. In my own unique way, I've experienced a full spectrum of betrayal as a woman, interpersonal, institutional, and definitely internalized. I've done the work and continue to do the work to become aware, to name it, to witness, grieve, deconstruct, and begin again. And while I continue to witness this in a time like this, a presidency like this, when I'm feeling lower or not loving my energy, as long as I'm not bypassing my nervous system, something that I will ask myself is, what would Gandhi do? Okay. Gandhi to me is someone who chose radical resistance, peaceful protest, radical hope, and radical love. So while I still grieve by what's happening in the world today, by different betrayals, while I grieve at crossing paths with a community that is outraged at the thought of having a warming center anywhere near their house during the winter time, while I grieve around myself, my partners, and even my children's treatment being different because we have different belief systems, I still choose hope. Because to me, hope is its own revolutionary act. These systems that betray and lie would prefer for us to remain functionally frozen. And this will not be the case for me in the long run. I will process as needed, I will keep going, and I will root and anchor in so that I feel safe to rise and be more visible and be witnessed in my truth the way that we're all meant to. And if you're ready to root deeper and rise higher, however that might look for you, to heal, to lead, to align yourself and your business or your personal life with your soul's truth, I would love to support you. I currently have a few private mentorship spots open, and I would love for you to be a part of that. There are 6 and 12-month options. I have a business mentorship for newer coaches, making sure things are structured in a way that aligns for them and where they want to go with their business. And to work out kinks, like in your first year or years of business, or while you work towards your first 100K. But also, if you are a working professional, a CEO, an executive, I have mentorships for people like you to return to your soul as it relates to your career with trauma informed, nervous system backed support to really help you come home to yourself in a way that you deserve so that you can feel joy, peace, and the love and the light that every human is deserving of. So if you're interested in those, check out the show notes. If you have questions beyond that, I will leave a link for you to book a consult call with me, and let's get you taken care of. I hope you all continue to have the best day and week.